Hey everybody, welcome to the lecture on federalism. What we're going to do today is we're going to better understand what these actual graphs mean, these diagrams mean in relation to federalism versus anti-federalism. So let's get into a little bit of history while we're at it, taking a history course to get into it. So the important thing to remember is that in 1789, the United States was a nation in name only, as the people still thought of themselves as citizens of their state. And we've gone over this a few times in class. First, right, this is where their first identity is, and then perhaps maybe the nation. And those people that would identify themselves with the nation would be statespeople, right? Politicians, people that were in elected office. But your everyday person, not at all, would identify with being an American to any extent that we would understand today. So as a result of the weaknesses
of the Articles of Confederation, the first Constitution of the United States, the majority of people realized the need for a new and stronger government, but everyone was not in agreement as to how much power the new government should have. So it's important to keep in mind that the country was large, right? If you picture the eastern seaboard, the huge expanse of land, sparsely settled, and that communication, obviously, compared to our standards, was primitive. It's before texting was around, right? And that the central government did not influence the lives of most people to any great degree whatsoever, especially under the Articles of Confederation. So many people, including many at the forefront of the struggle for independence, believed that a centralized republican system would not work in a country so large, with so many varied interests as the United States. So it makes sense that they devised something as weak as the Articles of Confederation. They wanted to preserve the autonomy of each state at the time. So these opponents to the Constitution were called anti-federalists, right, as opposed to the federalists, who drew their support primarily from the rural areas, the agriculture areas where subsistence agriculture moved the economy, but their leaders came from regions of the high classes, right? So people like Thomas Jefferson were concerned about the plight of what he would refer to as the common people within this new constitution that was going to be attempted to be ratified. So that's important to keep in mind, that the Constitution is in Philadelphia is drafted in 1787, in the summer of 1787, but it has not been ratified. It needs the state assembly approval. The state assembly members, the majority of them, 2/3 of them, have got to vote for the Constitution to ratify it so it becomes law, right? And so the people opposed to this ratification process, again, are going to be the anti-federalists. So many of the anti-federalists were moved by ideological reservations. They distrust, in other words, great authority. They just got done fighting a war that they perceived that had too much authority. They were fighting a government that had too much authority, a la the king and the parliament. They were concerned, so what they were concerned about when the Constitution came, they were concerned that this Constitution did not have a Bill of Rights. So how would individual people's natural rights be protected under a stronger centralized government? So supporters of the new Constitution called themselves the Federalists in order to counter the anti-federalist arguments, some of them, that they were making. So these people included James Madison, this guy right here, John Jay, this guy right here, and Alexander, this John Jay right here, let's see, make sure we highlight him right there, John Jay and Alexander Hamilton. They published a series of newspaper articles too in support of this, basically this propaganda
campaign called the Federalist Papers, 84 essays in total, in order again to counter anti-federalist concerns and arguments, to explain why we needed a new constitution that supported a stronger central government, and why it would be in the interest of all Americans and bind all the states into something more tangible and called America. So they pointed out that power within the national government was divided among the president, a bicameral legislature, and the judiciary branch, right? The division of powers theory. It was argued that each branch would be a check and a balance on the others, on all of the others, and this would preserve state autonomy, would preserve any concept of liberty. So Madison suggested that the great size of social diversity of the United States would safeguard Republican government rather than destroy it. He argued that the great number of interest groups would diffuse power and prevent tyranny in his arguments. The Federalists also argued that the new government would provide economic, social, and political stability. Something that the government of the Articles of Confederation was grossly failing to provide for. Besides merchants and creditors, the Federalists also included military officers, diplomats, and officials who had served in the Continental Congress during the war. These men acquired a national rather than a state or national lookout. In other words, they were the early emergence of American nationalism. So during the ratification process of the new Constitution, that is when the states are deciding if they want this or not. And it should be noted that this barely actually passed for a number of issues, including the issue that we looked at last time regarding Article 6. Article 6 regarding the religious test clause. So there were a number, and slavery and the issues of too much authority to the central government. And so these differences in the ratification process began to expose early fractures and divisions within American society that reflected sectional differences, mainly going to be translated between North and South early on, as early as 1787. In fact, many argue that the seeds of the Civil War are planted right in the construction of the Constitution itself. Social and economic interest groups rather than individual states, right? And so the debate itself, what's interesting about the debate itself and the ratification process is it's beginning to form this, what's called an imaginary community, nationalism, this idea of an American, right? And so, it's often argued too that the common person within the United States for the first couple of generations really would not identify themselves as Americans until the age of Jackson, until Andrew Jackson becomes president in the late 1820s and 1830s. So just take note of that. But yeah, this concludes our lecture on federalism and the Federalist Papers. So continue on with the lecture. You've got 3 more learning objectives by my count, so I'll see you guys in class. Take